Welcome to the ITIL for Practitioner Supplier Management Official Sample Paper 1 recording. We would like to acknowledge AXELOS and PeopleCert as we have used their logo and official sample paper in this recording. This is the first of the two official sample papers from PeopleCert. These are along the same lines as the actual question paper. Of course, in the real exam, the questions could be much different because this is a limited choice of questions, but the style of the questions would be very similar. The exam is multiple choice. It's for 30 minutes. If you're writing the exam in a language other than your spoken language, then the exam system would detect that and give you 25% additional time. So that would make it 38 minutes. There will be 20 questions. Each question is worth 1 mark. There is no negative marking. And there's only one correct answer per question because all are multiple choice questions. And you need to score at least 13 answers correctly to pass the exam. It's a closed book. It'll be officially invigilated by an online invigilator or proctor from PeopleCert. I will be taking you through the 20 questions in this recording and also give you some moments to reflect on your thinking and for the answer before I reveal the answer and explain it from my end. For some of the answers, I may even show you the practice guide, which is accessible either through your PeopleCert login or through the Bookshelf app. We have a separate recording explaining how to obtain access to your supplier management guide, practice guide, either through the PeopleCert account or through the Bookshelf app. And that is done using your exam voucher provided to you by us from One World Training. And you can use the same exam voucher to book your exam as well. So we have the recording explaining both the exam booking process and the ebook, the practice guide access process. So for some of the answers, I'll be taking you through the practice guide so that you will have a fair idea about where you can locate the answers in the practice guide. Of course, you have the official answers PDF as well. The official question and answers PDFs are available in your e-learning access. We also have online simulated exams in your e-learning access for both paper 1 and paper 2, which will use a timer as well. So you have multi modes of practice available to you. I will begin with question number 1. A retail organization has an internal IT service provider. The service provider wants to develop an effective supplier management practice. What is the benefit of this for the retail organization? A. Optimized use of the internal resources. B. Seamless service quality across the supply chain. C. Delegation of the non-core competencies. D. Access to the expert knowledge of the suppliers. You need to recollect the benefits for the consumer versus the benefits for the provider. And here we have the retail organization who is a consumer rather than being a provider. So there is one choice here, which is a consumer benefit, and the other should be the provider's benefit. Option A, this will be a benefit to the service provider. The optimized use of the internal resources. Even though the practice is beneficial for both the provider and the consumers, this one is for the provider. So in the official answer, you might see that the explanation of the answer is slightly different. It gives you the reasoning as the benefits for the provider include continual improvement achieved through learning and refinement of customer needs and IT environment. So it's worded slightly differently. So optimized use of the internal resources happens through the continual improvement. So in such questions, you need to watch out that the language in the answer choices may not exactly match the one from the practice guide. Option B, seamless service quality across the service supply chain. This seems to be a benefit for the consumer because the consumer can have better image due to uninterrupted business services. And that means seamless service quality across the supply chain. Option C, delegation of the non-core competencies. This is definitely a benefit for the service provider because they can have optimized staffing models by focusing internal resources on core competencies while outsourcing non-core competencies to suppliers. Option D, access to the experts' knowledge of the suppliers. This is again a provider's benefit because it is improved service management practices to the provider by leveraging best practices from expert supplier partners. Therefore, option B, as I indicated, is the correct answer. Because this is related to better image to the consumer due to uninterrupted business services. Question number 2. An organization wants to be sure that the sourcing strategy and guidelines developed by the IT team meet the organization's strategic requirements. What is a relevant metric for this? So this question seems to be a practice success factor related metric question. The options are A, the satisfaction rating given by the service consumers of their interaction with suppliers. B, the number of supplier conformance issues found during audits. C, the impact of service disruption caused by the supplier's contributions to the organization's processes. Or D, the number of times that supplier activities have negatively affected the organization's performance. Just to remind you, there are 3 practice success factors. One of them is associated with the sourcing strategy and guidelines. The other one is about the supplier relationships, and the last one is about the supplier integration into the organization. So option A, the question being related to the sourcing strategy metric. Option A is related to the service relationship metric, wherein you have the satisfaction with the organization's relationship with third parties. So A is indeed the same satisfaction rating given by service consumers of their interaction with suppliers. So the PSF there was ensuring that the service relationships with all suppliers and partners are managed effectively and in line with internal and external regulations. Option B, the number of supplier conformance issues found during audits. This one is also about the same PSF, the service relationships one, where one of the metrics is the number and impact of breaches to relevant internal and external regulations. So B is also incorrect. Option C, the impact of service disruption caused by the suppliers' contributions to the organization's processes. This one seems to be related to the PSF of ensuring the effective integration of third-party services into the organization's product and services, wherein one of the metrics is number of incidents and SLA breaches associated with third-party participation in the organization's value streams. So C is also incorrect. Option D, however, which is the number of times that supplier activities have negatively affected the organization's performance, this one seems to be the relevant metric for the sourcing strategy PSF, wherein it's about the number and impact of cases where strategic objectives could not be achieved due to dependencies on third parties. And that's what is reflected by the phrase organization's performance in option D. So D would be correct. However, let's take a quick look into the practice guide. And I'm in the Supplier Management Practice Guide in the Bookshelf app. The advantage of having a Bookshelf app is you can have a local copy of this. You don't have to be connected to the network in order to access your PeopleCert account and view it there online. And here, if you notice, there are 3 PSFs in table 2.3 and the metrics associated with them. And the first one is the sourcing strategy based PSF. And you have the first metric, the number and impact of cases where strategic objectives could not be achieved due to dependencies on third parties. So that's the evidence of the correct answer. So which was option D. We are into question number 3. An organization is creating a sourcing strategy. What 2 aspects should be included in the sourcing strategy? Supplier categorization, sourcing policy, supplier contracts, sourcing principles. And you need to select 2 of the 4 given or listed options and eventually pick one of the 4 answers, A, B, C, or D. So sourcing strategy, let us see which of the two are part of the sourcing strategy and which are not. So here, if we look at the sourcing strategy should contain the sourcing principles, sourcing criteria, supplier categorization, requirements for the suppliers from every category, and basic rules of supplier relationship management. Therefore, we have here the first one, supplier categorization, and number 4, sourcing principles, which make some of the elements of the sourcing strategy. Source supplier contracts are totally separate. They are as a result of the evaluation, the RFX process steps, and then the evaluation and negotiation with suppliers before the contract is awarded. And whereas the sourcing policy is defined as part of the strategy management. So therefore, 1 and 4 would be the correct one, and which is option D. Yes. And one thing about the option 2 there, sourcing policy, which could be tricky. According to the sourcing policy, a sourcing strategy needs to be developed and maintained. And then within the sourcing strategy, we have this the supplier categorization, the sourcing principles, the rules of supplier relationship management, and the requirements of the suppliers of each category. Now, the categorization may be done in various ways as the organizations feels appropriate. It could be, for example, based on the importance of the suppliers or some other criteria. Question number 4. An organization's supplier manager would like to understand the service management software available from a variety of suppliers. The supplier manager will use the responses from suppliers to help define the organization's requirements. What type of request should the supplier manager issue? A, request for information, B, request for proposal, C, request for quote, or D, request for bid. The question indicates that the organization supplier manager would like to get some understanding first, therefore has to be the request for information, because that is used to gather information about products, services, solutions available from potential suppliers. And the information gathered through this RFI can allow an organization to refine their requirements further and proceed further. So A would be correct. Option B, the request for proposal, is more formal and comprehensive document issued to seek proposals from potential suppliers to provide products, services, or solutions to meet specific defined requirements. Usually this is for complex projects which require solutions from the suppliers. C is request for quote, which is a formal but concise for soliciting price quotes from potential suppliers for specific, usually standard products and services. And the main purpose of this is to obtain pricing information. They are pretty straightforward procurement procedures, wherein the scope, requirements, and specifications are relatively simple and well-defined. The last one, RFB, request for bid, is also formal and highly detailed to invite competitive bids from potential suppliers to provide specific products or services. It's a bit like the RFP, the proposal one only, but with slight differences. So the RFB, the bid one, includes technical requirements, quantities, delivery schedules, quality standards, contractual terms and conditions such as payment terms, project milestones, performance guarantees, and other legal regulatory requirements. Now, one difference between the request for proposal and the request for bid would be that the request for bid it facilitates a more fair process, fair and transparent. Here, what happens in most cases is the bidders cannot change their pricing, so they cannot negotiate the pricing once their solution is acceptable to the organization. Whereas in the RFP, even though a price is quoted in the request for proposals response in the proposal from the supplier, if that the proposal was selected, even though the price would have been listed by them, the final pricing can always be negotiable. So therefore, the correct answer here would be A, RFI, request for information. Question number 5. An organization has a complex and well-defined set of requirements for a private cloud solution. The organization would like to ensure that it treats potential suppliers fairly by evaluating them strictly according to their responses to the requirements. What type of request should the organization issue? A, request for information, B, request for quote, C, request for bid, or D, request for demonstration. So here the evaluation is strict as per the responses to the requirements, and it is done in a fair manner. So you might recollect that word in the explanation under the previous questions answer. So it cannot be RFI because that's to gather information initially from the suppliers. It is more like a preliminary investigative research step before initiating a formal procurement process such as RFP or RFQ, etc. B, request for quote is formal. We have seen that in the previous question. So typically used for straightforward procurement where the scope, requirements, and specifications are relatively simple and well-defined. So usually when companies would like to procure standard components, equipment, or raw materials, etc., they would issue an RFQ. The RFB is a fair system. It's also very specific. Even though it looks similar to the RFP, but the RFP is extremely specific and the suppliers will have to respond exactly as per the RFB, the bid. Whereas in the request for proposal, they propose a solution and then there can be discussions on the solutions, etc., and there could be some changes. But the RFB is a more specific and the response needs to be exactly in line with the requirements. And you see in the question, fairly by evaluating them strictly according to the responses to the requirements. Therefore, C would be the correct answer. So in short, an RFB bid is a formal and highly detailed document used to invite competitive bids from potential suppliers to provide specific products or services. They ensure a fair and transparent procurement process where bidders have an equal opportunity to compete based on the specified requirements. Option D, request for demonstration, is different. It's a formal document used to request live presentations or hands-on demonstrations of products or services from potential suppliers to assess the functionality, performance, or suitability of the solution. So these are used to extend beyond the written submissions so that the organizations can experience the product or service in action. Usually it can be a demonstration rather than having to run through the entire product, because the development of the product or service will take more time once the RFD is okayed. So RFB is the correct one, as we noted.